Fred VanVleet was frustrated last night following the Toronto Raptors' loss to the LA Clippers, which we'll break down in this video, but not just because of the result, but also because of the horrible officiating the Raptors have received in recent games, and he was pretty overt about his frustration with the referees, cursing out specifically ref Ben Taylor in the post-game presser, and had a lot of comments that we'll break down in this video and show that entire clip. Additionally, we had a trade offer revealed between the Toronto Raptors and New York Knicks at this year's trade deadline that involved OG Anunoby. We finally have the details regarding that 3-pick deal that ended up nearly going down, so we'll discuss that as well as a whole bunch more in this video. So without further ado, let's jump to the first topic of discussion. The first thing we're taking a look at is Fred VanVleet cursing out the referees. Now, the referees, especially in the last two games against the Clippers and the Denver Nuggets, have just been bad, right? There was a whole lot of talk, a lot of stuff going on about Scott Foster against the Denver Nuggets, throwing out Scotty Barnes in the last seconds of that game when the Raptors were down by 3, giving the Nuggets an extra free throw to take the game out of reach for the Toronto Raptors, solely because Scotty Barnes rose his hands up like this and basically talking to himself said, "Y'all are cheating, man." And I don't know, absolute nonsense, especially at that time in the game. Insanity that he was throwing Scotty Barnes out. Not even just give him a technical, but threw him directly out of that game. That was horrible. I made a bunch of memes about it. I made a couple of videos, one deep fake Adam Silver video, which I'm proud of, so check out that short. But last night, things got worse. Some people were joking, Scott Foster's not reffing our game tonight, let's go. But Ben Taylor is a guy that has notoriously had a little bit of a beef with Fred VanVleet. Jack Armstrong, Matt Devlin used to bring it up every now and then on the broadcast and stuff. I always hear them chatting. Ben Taylor, he loves giving that whistle to Fred VanVleet. And once again tonight, he teed up Fred VanVleet, kind of hurting the momentum for this game. And Fred VanVleet was not happy with just the overall officiating, which we'll dive into this game when we sort of break it down, but especially getting that technical. And he had this to say regarding Ben Taylor and just the whole entire reffing situation in general.
Definitely in the third quarter there. I don't mind. I'll take a fine. I don't really care. I thought, Ben Taylor was fucking terrible tonight. I thought that most nights, a couple of the, out of the 3, there's 1 or 2 that just fucked the game up, and it's been like that a couple games in a row. Denver was tough, obviously. You come out tonight, you're competing pretty hard. The third quarter, I get a bullshit tech, changes the whole dynamic of the game, changes the whole flow of the game. And, most of the refs are trying hard. I like a lot of the refs are trying hard. They're pretty fair. They communicate well. And then you got the other ones who just want to be dicks and just kind of fucks the game up. Nobody's coming to see them. They come to see the players. And I think we're losing a little bit of the fabric of what the NBA is and was. And it's been disappointing this season. You can look up most of my texts this year have been with Ben Taylor officiating. So at a certain point as a player, you feel it's personal. And it's never a good place to be. That's not why we lost tonight. We got outplayed. But it definitely makes it tougher to overcome.
So Fred VanVleet was not happy with how things played out. A few F-bombs, a few curses going at Ben Taylor's way. And firstly, again, it's kind of dark. Like, they talk about it on the broadcast every now and then. Fred VanVleet's back and forth with Ben Taylor and his, quick whistles and all that. Obviously, the broadcast can't say anything directly bashing an NBA referee or anything like that. But, Fred VanVleet, it is unprofessional for a guy to constantly be giving tease to a dude just because you don't like him and all that sort of stuff. And I guess Fred VanVleet is sort of asking for it for, I'd imagine there is some animosity if it's built up to this sort of post-game press conference. I've never seen someone call out a referee as overtly as this in a post-game presser, but, so it might go both ways. But again, the referees are supposed to control the situation. They're not supposed to let their emotions get involved and all that. And as Fred said, right, they can't make it about themselves. Regardless of what disdain you might have for a player, you can't let that spill into how you're managing a game, right? That's literally their job. Obviously, Fred VanVleet's job is to put a basket in the hoop, right? Play some NBA stuff. Whether or not he's complaining to refs and all that, right, might turn some fans off or whatnot, but he can do that and still be good at his job, right? Playing the game of basketball. The referee, right, he can't hate on a player, actively go against a specific player, and execute on his job properly. So it is just a horrible look that the referees are kind of doing this. It's kind of overt and all that. And, while it was a pretty direct and emphatic by Fred VanVleet, and people aren't sure how, people will react to that, he's gaining a lot of support from around the league. I've seen a lot of fans, pretty well every single team, sort of jump on Fred VanVleet, the love wagon on that front, which is nice to see. And even other players, as Marcus Smart had this to say about foul trouble. I don't know if you guys have seen Fred VanVleet's interview, and that's all I'm going to say. That lets you know I'm not speaking out of my butt, but I'm going to let Fred do all the talking. And, Marcus Smart's not trying to get another fine or anything like that, talking about the referees, but a lot of players sort of back Fred VanVleet, his stance on the things that were going on there. And we got some insight into how much money or potentially a suspension from Michael Grange could go down, and saying that 35K is typically the top end number when it comes to players being fined for criticizing officials. Folks I spoke with were not aware of a suspension for criticizing referees. That said, it's hard to find a player being both as specific as well as sweeping as Fred VanVleet in this case. So, I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see what comes of this whole Fred VanVleet situation. This is definitely the worst ref bashing I've heard by any NBA player, any NBA coach in recent years. My memory following the league very closely, so maybe some times back in the day or anything like that. But that's a pretty overt take there by Fred. And the one thing that does worry me, because we saw the opposite thing happen when Shai Gilgeous-Alexander for the Oklahoma City Thunder, a Canadian loved by Raptors Canadian fans, right, started praising the officials, said, I don't care how the calls go. They're human. They're this, they're that, right? Like, I love the officials. Start talking big on them. Then the refs start giving him calls. He's getting some of the most free throws in the NBA. I know for a while he was leading the league in free throws for a little bit after that quote and stuff. So his approach, and just as a guy that's refereed myself, and obviously I am not a professional referee. I'm not getting paid properly to do it, but I've coached or refed some youth basketball, and if I see a little kid yelling at me, complaining at me, roasting me for being a bad referee, even though I know I'm a trash ref, even though I'm fully aware of that, I don't need some 7-8-year-old kid telling me that, and I'm giving him no calls the rest of the game. So I guess to a less extent, the NBA refs are doing, but there's no real way, in my opinion, at least in my limited experience refereeing, there's a way to fully detach yourself from the calls and your opinion of the player. So, if Fred VanVleet's out here roasting a whole officials, as he kind of did in that front, he did say some are fine and all that, but really going full gear against the referee, contingent, then we should be worried about Fred VanVleet, especially as a smaller player getting calls going forward. So that's my one worry, but shout out to Fred VanVleet for speaking his mind and standing up for the Toronto Raptors. Let me know what you guys think about all that down below. But there was a game that happened last night, and unfortunately, the Toronto Raptors couldn't get a W. They had a hot start. It was a late game down in LA, but Toronto, they had their moments. It wasn't as close of a game as the Denver Nuggets outing, right? That one was really fun to the end. But the Raptors, sort of, especially the second half, midway through the second quarter, as the game went along, it sort of got messier, and then made a little bit one of those fake comebacks on at the end, but couldn't handle just the lack of offense that we had in this game going last night. And if you look at the box score, got the wrong buttons. Pascal had 20. 9 of 21. He had some shots early, which is great, but as the game went along, he was looking fatigued. He was dribbling into players. They didn't even have to double, because most of the season we've been seeing Pascal get 2, 3, 4 bodies collapse in on him when he's driving in that lane. He was getting stopped by one dude, and the Clippers do have some solid wing defenders, but he was looking just gas dribbling the ball off his foot. How many turnovers Pascal had? He had 3. Looked like it could have been a few more on that front. And Scotty, you see, had 20 points, but didn't really have the most efficient night by any means. And I don't mind Scotty Barnes taking a few shots, driving into the lane, the mid-range area. I'm not going to be out here and disappointed in Scotty Barnes for taking 20-plus shots. How many did he take in this game? Right, 21. 6 of 21. I thought the shots they took sometimes were off balance, but they were him getting to the right spots. And if he has a little bit more body control, if he has a little bit more just control self, right, in terms of taking hits, bouncing off, not fading away and stuff like that, more of those buckets will go in. We've seen him hit shots from that little mid-range, mid-post area, but unfortunately, they didn't go down enough last night for the Toronto Raptors to look good. And when Scotty Barnes misses, it's not like Kawhi's, where I guess Kawhi does have kind of a flat jump shot, but usually they kind of dangle around the rim and often bounce in, right? And Scotty misses, it's kind of some ugly shots and makes the offense look a bit gross out there. So I don't know. I'm still happy with Scotty Barnes taking those shots. I'd rather see an aggressive Scotty missing than a passive Scotty, even if he's hitting a couple shots. So, we'll take the L's there. It's a development. It's a tough matchup for Scotty Barnes. All the wing defenders they have down there with the Clippers. Fred VanVleet in this one, 4-12 from the field. Was really hot there for a few moments, right? Like, had a couple of really, like a 3-minute stretch. I believe it was in the second where he was just knocking down 3 after 3. How many did he hit in this game? Hit 3 threes, right? There was a couple of really tough ones that went down, but for the rest of it was pretty quiet. Obviously got that tech, as he said, kind of took him out of the game. And Pirtle, not the biggest night, was getting absolutely worked in the paint by Zubac especially, so that's not the greatest look, even though we know Pirtle's better on defense. Like, he's not a guy that we have to worry about defensively, but I thought the size of Zubac was still kind of killing us on that last night. And OG and Chris Boucher were the two guys I thought definitively had good games. I wouldn't mind seeing some more shots go OG and Anunoby's way. Obviously, Boucher can get those dunks. He's good at moving to that dunker spot and getting his game rolling. And this is the one question that I do have with this Raptors team as we close out the season. Obviously, we're not in tank mode. Even as many people are calling for the Raptors to tank and all of that, right? Like, we're not in tank mode yet, right? We're still the 9th seed. We're not anywhere close of actually getting to Victor Wembanyama, even though there's a few teams right on our tail. Right, we're rooting for these wins. And my question is with Gary Trent Jr. Is he going to be able to be effective coming off the bench consistently? Obviously, he had a big game against, I believe it was the Nuggets, where he came off the bench and hit a bunch of shots. I'm not sure it was the Nuggets or the game prior, but he's had some decent ones coming off the bench since he was moved there after the acquisition of Jakob Poeltl. But if he's not going to be able to be consistent in this limited role, which was sort of the case in his first season with the Raptors, that second half of the year when we still had Kyle Lowry on the team, we acquired him for Norman Powell, right? He wasn't very good off the bench consistently, and he played much better as a starter. If we're going to get duds like this 2 out of 3 nights from Gary Trent Jr. playing these minutes, like, yes, I want Gary Trent Jr. getting some run. He needs more than 24 minutes a game, but if he's shooting 2 of 11 from the field with a little bit disengaged on defense, like, that's going to be tough, and the Raptors need that firepower off the bench. Obviously, no Will Barton in the game last night. Precious Achiuwa, as we really harped on at the beginning of the season, there's some nights where he looks like your third best player, and there's sometimes nights he looks like a G League scrub or something like that. And tonight was one of those games where he didn't really have it, especially on the defensive end, was fouling a lot. Right, we need Precious, we need Gary off the bench, at least one of those guys to provide a little spark, a little lift. Boucher was able to do it. Will Barton comes back, maybe he'll be able to give us some opportunities there. And Thaddeus Young only played 5 minutes. Can't expect much in that limited of sample size, but no, I'm not stressing too much. I've seen a lot of the tank fans, come back in full force following our 2 losses to the Nuggets and the Clippers. Those are 2 good teams. Those are 2 good teams in the Western Conference. I'm not completely shook, completely disappointed in an L on that front, but we do need to win some of these games going forward. And tomorrow's game against the Lakers will be a big one, so hopefully the Toronto Raptors can get that W. But the final thing we're taking a look at in this video is the Knicks offer for OG Anunoby revealed. Now, OG Anunoby was a big name regarding coming around this trade deadline, and I've seen Masai Ujiri, especially like after the losses, say, hey, why didn't we sell high on our guys? Why didn't we trade OG for the 3 first-round picks? But now we have some insight in terms of where those 3 first-round picks were coming from and that New York Knicks offer. So that was a team that was talked about a lot at this year's trade deadline. As basically, this comes from Mike Scotto saying there were rumblings the Knicks talked to the Raptors about Evan Fournier. And I think this was it was 3 first-round picks for OG Anunoby. But talks didn't go that far, I was told. I'd assume that there were protections of some kind, and there's also uncertainty if OG Anunoby would stay with the Knicks in the summer of 2024, where he's expected to opt out of his deal and become an unrestricted free agent. He's OG Anunoby on a good contract right now, but some executives think that he's going to cost too much when he hits the open market. Next season, Evan Fournier will basically become an expiring, and it's $18.8 million per year. And Toronto was a team regarding Evan Fournier, and apparently Fournier almost went to the LA Lakers as well. So it seems like that package that everyone was talking about with 3 first-round picks involved those ugly New York Knicks draft picks, or the ugly protected picks that New York Knicks acquired at last year's draft that had a lot of protections that likely wouldn't convey to first, and Evan Fournier, which is a negative like a liability in terms of his contract, in terms of being brought in. So I'm not disappointed in Masai Ujiri not accepting those 3 first-round pick deal from the New York Knicks. But let me know what you guys think about that sort of situation there. But folks, you guys are the best to make this far. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Lots of Toronto Raptors vids coming your way on the shorts front and on the YouTube front. Subscribe to TikTok, Instagram, all that sort of stuff. But you guys are the best. I'm signing out. Cheers.